Okay, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we are on Treaty 1 and Dakota Nation's territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. My name is Neil Harden. I'm chairing today's panel. With me in the committee room is Doug Marks, and also by Zoom is Brent McIntyre. The assessors today are Kem Wong and Arif Dost Mohammed, and the recording secretary is Kara Belshaw. To the participants of the hearing, please note you are placed in the waiting room until your property is called upon. When it is your turn, you will be admitted into the meeting. Kindly follow along the City of Winnipeg's Board Revision YouTube channel for the hearing process. Once the host admits you to the hearing, please close or mute your YouTube player. You will then be permitted to speak with respect to your property. Once your hearing has concluded, you can leave the meeting. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rule in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by council and is independent of it and the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions the applicant may have, and the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will be for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the board decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. So, Kara, can you do the swearing in for the first item?
Yes. Mr. Assessor, for the record, please state your name.
Kem Wong.
Do you affirm the evidence you will present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
And Mr. Applicant, you are still muted, so if you could unmute yourself and please state your name.
DJ Trudeau.
Do you affirm the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so the first item on today's docket is 1515 Ward Avenue, and the issue is assessed value. So, Mr. Wong, can you proceed, please?
The subject property is 1515 Ward. The roll number is 060-934-63225. It's a residential apartment block that's 4 stories high. It was built in 2020, and it has 77 suites with 60 indoor parking stalls and 57 outdoor parking stalls. On page 2 are the sales for the subject property. It sold in 2018 for $2,279,000.
Okay, just a note on that, Mr. Wong. Normally, the board doesn't like to see anything that's post-reference year material. I recognize in this case, though, it's probably just a land sale.
Yeah, sorry about that. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $1,564 to get a potential income of $1,445,000. We used a 2.6% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $1,407,000. And we used a 34% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $919,000. Capped at 5%, we have an estimated market value of $18,397,000, approximately $239,000 per unit. The property is a new property, so we don't have any history on the subject property. So looking at market information, on page 4 are some market rents showing that the rent that we've applied to the subject property is in line with what's in the market. On the bottom of page 4 are some expense comparables showing that the expense ratio that we've used is in line with what newer buildings experience. On page 5 are some sales of 100 Southview and 1201 St. Anne's, and with a per unit sale price of about $256,000 to $325,000. I believe this supports the value that we have on 1515 Ward at $239,000 per unit. On page 6 is information on how we derived our cap rates. And some information on cap rates from some other organizations. The cap rates that we applied are in line with other organizations. On page 7 are some cap rate sales. On if you look at the multifamily section, the third near the middle of the page, we have cap rates ranging from 4 to 6.09%. And we have additional cap rate of 500 Portage at the bottom of page 7 at 4.07%. On page 8 is the cap rate information from Altus Group indicating a cap rate of 4.5%. Just that the cap rate that we've applied is in line with what's in the market, and it could possibly be a little bit lower. On page 9 is our excerpts from the Municipal Assessment Act that may be relevant. On page 10 is the location of the subject property. And an overhead view of the subject property. The subject property is located in the south end of the city of Winnipeg. On page 11 and the next few pages are some pictures of the subject property. The subject property is probably on the higher end of the apartment range, probably more they're higher than average in terms of apartments, newer apartments. On page 12 and 13 are some more pictures. And on page 14 is the information on the amenities for the building and the suites. On page 15 is the permit that was taken out for the subject property. So when looking at the market information that's available, it supports the assessed value with regards to rent, vacancy, cap rate, and market sales as well. Having said that, I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $18,397,000.
Is that it?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Trudeau, do you have any questions of the assessor?
Yes. I have a question about the 2.6% vacancy rate. How did we come up with that exact value here when, the past handful of years we've been...
Yeah. We asked for information from property owners across the city, and that's the kind of like the average vacancy for a newer type of property, and it's based off of information that's been submitted by other property owners in the city.
Then I'm going to the sale comparables here. We have 100 Southview and 1201 St. Anne's Road. Those ones I'm having a tough time understanding how those are comparable.
Sorry, Mr. Trudeau, I'm just going to interrupt you. We're having a very difficult time hearing you in the North Committee room. Okay. So if I could ask you to just remain still and speak into your microphone, it might assist with us being able to hear you better. Thank you.
Yeah. Can you hear? Is this better?
A little bit.
Okay. Let me see if I can turn my mic up here.
It seems to be cutting out a little bit here and there.
Yeah. No, I don't think the Wi-Fi is the best. But I'll try. Let me know if you're having trouble hearing me. So again, with respect to those two comparables there, because they're townhouse condos, they're a little bit of a different market segment than an apartment building. That would be kind of like comparing a single family home to a condo, right? There are too many factors that differentiate themselves. So I was just curious how come there wasn't any other sale comparables for multifamily similars to this. Used townhouse condos. Yeah,
they are townhouses, but I believe they are representative of newer, more like higher end apartment buildings.
Mm-hmm. Let me see if I have questions here. I think that was all I had for questions on the report.
Okay. Brent, any questions?
I have no questions, thank you.
Okay, Doug, any questions?
No questions at this time, thank you.
Okay. And I have no questions, so you can proceed with your presentation, Mr. Pateau.
Perfect. So we have submitted here because we're referencing 2020 taxes as well as 2021. We had an appraisal done just before, I believe we had occupancy for this property in November of 2020. So we had a narrative, Colliers International, very accredited appraisal service here in Winnipeg. We had them do a narrative appraisal for us so we could know what we're working with when we were wrapping the project up, right? So what we're seeking today is to have the assessed value align with the appraisal that came in at $16,690,000. And if we go to page 5 of that gives you a really good executive summary about how they came up with that, right? So if we look at the direct income capitalization, so I know that they are showing a little bit higher of a net income than what the city had come in at, but what they're seeing right now is vacancies a bit higher. Our property still is not full due to the pandemic, but when we purchased it, no one.
I think I'm having a hard time now.
Oh. Yeah, you're not quite a bit.
Trudeau, can I ask maybe if you want to try cutting your video and we'll see if that assists with the sound?
Sure, no problem. Let me try that here. All right, is that any better?
It does sound a little better right now, but let's proceed.
Let's see how we make out. So back to what I was saying is this property here, at the time that we were wrapping it up, we were in the middle of a pandemic, so our vacancy actually shot up quite a bit. You see a 5% vacancy rate opposed to what the city's looking for to 2.6. And we're still not full in this property. So they've also used a capitalization rate, I think, of 6% on this. Showing again that value of $16.69 million. And then if we look over to the direct comparison approach, they've concluded our unit value ranges from B2 $210,000 up to $220,000. Again, because this is an apartment, not almost a single family or a townhouse walk up, where you have your own garage, have shared amenities. You're in an apartment block, right? I'm just gonna go to now. I think our expenses kind of aligned with where we were looking at there. But yeah, I mean, realistically, I really want to weigh on this appraisal because this is an appraisal that we obtained in October of 2020. This is it. This should be the number that we're paying on our assessed value and referenced in our property taxes. And I think that basically sums it up.
Okay. I noticed you had some sales comparables.
Yes, and those were pulled from this appraisal as well.
Okay, so this is just an excerpt from that.
It is, yeah. So those were pulled from those to align up with the years, 2020 and 2021, because those are the years that we're referencing for property taxes. So those were, they had 6 different sale items. They're all multifamily apartment blocks, given a little bit older, but still, I mean, we're seeing cap rates. The lowest was 4.5, and up to 6.1. Right, and those are all recent sales over the last 2 years, and I would think that has something to do with our vacancy being a bit higher, and things are starting selling for as much as they used to back in prior to 2020.
Okay, but I will. Sales dates are all after April 1st, 2018, so they can be considered post-reference year material then. Mm-hmm. All right. Okay, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think that's really it. I mean, the appraisal says it all. This is a factual number. They can't give us anything that's not, and this is what I would like to weigh on when you guys are considering what to evaluate this property at.
Okay, Mr. Wong, do you have any questions?
Yes. I guess the numbers, it doesn't seem, I guess the page numbers are pretty faint. But on page 33,
yep. Okay.
It says significant investment characteristics of the subject property. On the market characteristics at the bottom of the paragraph, it says that the vacancy has increased for multifamily market, with current vacancy being at 3.1% as of winter 2020. Does that seem reasonable?
I'd say in some cases, yes. In Winnipeg, yeah. In the south end, it's been a bit tougher.
On page 36, under the direct capitalization page.
Yep.
At the bottom of that page, it's the analysis section. Mm-hmm. It says in the middle of the paragraph, it says that there's one example within St. Vital of an apartment building that's approximately 10 years old, transacting at 5.25% cap rate. In addition, the sale of 481 Osborne with a newer fourplex apartment development has closed at a reported 5.1% cap rate at $301,000 per unit. Is that accurate?
I would say yes, but that's also a 4-unit building. Those cap rates are a little bit different. I mean, it's harder to have vacancies in those, right? Even when we're looking at purchasing land, I mean, the larger the unit, the smaller the lower the cost per unit goes down.
Yeah, and it looks like 803 St. Mary sold at approximately $250,000 per unit. I think if on page 34, saying on page 34, 803 St. Mary's, it has 6 units, but it's a little bit more apartment-like, and that one sold at $250,000 per unit.
Again, smaller units, we're talking 77 versus 6.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. And on page 37, at the top of page 37, it's saying that the cap rate kind of ranges from 5.1 to 5.25% if the subject was 100% occupied, but is applying a 5.5% cap rate because it's not fully occupied, and it being 69% vacant, it's adding 0.5% to the cap rate because it's 69% vacant. Do you expect this vacancy to be long term?
Well, given the fact that it's really fluctuated. We still have not been 100% full, and we've had people move out. We've had some move back in. It's been a very tough property actually to lease out. I mean, it is a luxury apartment, but that comes with a little bit of a higher cost for your rental value, and it's just something that people are looking for affordable nowadays, right? So it has actually hindered us for filling this property up, therefore taking on all the costs and not being able to cover that now.
Okay. And on page 39, on the second last paragraph, shown above is a chart indicating the relationship between the net operating income and the sale price per unit. Adjustments are made to the comparisons to adjust for this vast difference in net operating income. The results indicate an adjusted range between $232,000 per unit and $303,000 per unit. Of a unit value less than this range is deemed appropriate for the subject based on the current occupancy levels. But the comparables are indicating a value range of about $232,000 to $303,000 per unit. Is that correct?
For those ones there, yes, but then you go into the last paragraph where it deems our property to be between 210 and 222. Right?
Okay. That's all my questions.
Okay, Doug, do you have any questions?
None for me, thank you.
Okay, Brent?
I have no questions, thank you.
Okay, just I got one actually for each party now. Mr. Trudeau, you seem to be, this report seems to be saying you should adjust both the cap rate and the vacancy rate for vacancy. Isn't that kind of double counting the vacancy?
Double counting, I mean, just simply you're saying because all of a sudden the cap rate's going to be adjusted and then the vacancy rate's adjusted due to what's going on? Or is that the question?
Okay, but surely if you buy a brand new property, you would expect in the long term that the immediate vacancy rate due to leasing up would not be a long-term vacancy, would you not?
You would hope, but I mean that's like when people are trying to sell properties on a proposed net operating income, right? Paying someone for something that's non-existent.
Okay. All right. Mr. Wong, my question to you is that your 2.6% vacancy rate, that reflects the vacancy of fully mature properties throughout the city, does it not?
Yes.
So this being a new property, wouldn't you expect then to have a higher vacancy in the short term?
Potentially, but like we don't assess the property on a temporary basis, like on a month by month or a year by or like it doesn't go up and down. Like we just try to look at what it would how it would perform at in the long term, and not necessarily what it's doing in the last month, 6 months, and so yeah, we're just trying to look at it as how it would possibly perform in the long term.
All right. Okay. I have no more questions. And are there any questions from the panel arising from my questions?
Nope.
No questions. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then, does either party wish to add a summation to their Mr. Wong?
No.
Mr. Trudeau?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, well then that concludes this presentation. So thank you very much. And we'll go on to the second item on the docket, which is 1402 Ravelston.
So our assessor remains the same, but we have a new applicant. Mr. Applicant, for the record, can you please state your name?
Jarrett Story.
Do you affirm the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, let me just pull up all the...
Mr. Chair, before we commence, I do have a preliminary issue that I'd like to raise when it's appropriate.
Okay. All right, just a minute. I'm just pulling up the files. Okay, go ahead. What's your preliminary issue?
Thank you. So in reviewing the assessor's information, we did notice that there's a fair bit of post-reference material. And I would ask that this be acknowledged and that no weight or consideration be given to these parts of the submission. Our points of concern relate to the permits starting on page 15, running through page 18. And there's also on page 8, there's some evidence from a real estate forum from May of 18, though I will touch on that briefly because I do believe it was raised in the previous hearing. So there's permit information that I don't believe is appropriate to be included here. So I do ask that that not be considered by the board today.
Okay, Mr. Wong, your position on the permits?
It's just information on the subject property and what is existing there in terms of, I guess, the construction, like the physical property.
There are construction values there that are not redacted, and they are indeed post-reference.
Okay, I think we'll need to, as a panel, consult on this. So can we take a short break for the panel to discuss this issue?
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
We're going in camera.
All right, the panel discussed the matter raised, and we agree that we will put no weight on the permit values as
Thank you,
being
Mr. Chair.
post-reference material. All right, so Mr. Wong, you can proceed with your presentation.
Mr. Wong, you'll just have to unmute yourself, please.
All right. The subject property is 1402 Ravelston Avenue. The roll number is 040-072-62315. It's a residential apartment block that's 3 stories high. It's built in 2020 and has 72 suites with 108 outdoor parking stalls. On page 2 are some sales of the subject property. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $1,319 to get a potential income of $1,139,000. We used a 3% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $1,105,000, and we used a 41% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $645,000. Capped at 5%, we have an estimated market value of $12,913,000 to $179,000 per unit. This is a new property, so we'll have to look at the market for market information for the income approach. On page 4 are some rent comparables showing that the rent that we've used is in line with what's on the market. And on the bottom of page 4 are some expense comparables showing that the expense rate that we've used is supported by what's in the market. On page 5 are some sales comparables. 333 Ward coming in at about $175,000 per unit, and 718 Beach coming in at $178,000 per unit. That supports the assessed value, which is coming in at a little bit higher at $179,000 per unit. On page 5 is the information on how we derived our cap rates and some cap rates from other organizations. On page 7 are some cap rate sales that we have ranging from about 4 to a little bit over 6%. And on page 8 is some information on cap rate sales from Altus Group, indicating about a 4.5% cap rate. Page 9 are some excerpts, relevant excerpts from the Municipal Assessment Act. On page 10 are some pictures of the subject property. On page 14 is just some information on the suites and the amenities. And the last few pages are the permits that were taken out for the construction of the subject property.
Okay, and once again, we have ruled that we'll put no weight on those permits.
Okay. When looking at market information to try to establish the market value, the rents and the vacancy and the cap rate that we've used are supported by the market, as well as the sales, which also support the assessed value. So the market does support the assessed value, and I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $12,914,000.
Okay, does that conclude your presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, could I have 10 seconds to plug in my laptop?
Okay.
Battery's running low. Sorry.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, I'm back. Thank you.
All right. So questions, Mr. Story of the assessor.
Yes, thank you very much. Mr. Wong, were you the assessor who added this property to the tax roll?
No,
No, okay. Have you visited this property?
I'm not.
Okay. Now, so you haven't visited it, but is it safe to say that this property is essentially a commercial row house in terms of its style and construction by the city's definition of commercial row house?
We don't have it as such.
No, but okay. So to your knowledge, has anyone from the city visited this property?
I don't know.
Okay. Now, are you aware that this property does not include any common amenities? So there's no tenants lounge, there's no gym or fitness area. They are all contained units with no common area. Are you aware of that?
No.
Okay. All right. So page 3 of your brief, are all of these values model derived?
Yes.
Okay. And the average monthly rent per unit is $1,319. Can you tell me how that's broken down between 2-bedroom units and 3-bedroom units?
It's just an average between the 2 and 3 bedrooms.
Okay. All right. So it's fine. So you don't have there's not a granular analysis in terms of what a 2-bedroom might rent for or a 3-bedroom. Is that fair to say? It's blended. Is that?
Yes.
Okay. Can we agree, though, that properties with a higher degree of amenities would be considered more desirable than those without amenities and then would likely command a higher lease rate? Is that safe to say as a general principle?
Possibly.
Okay. Okay, if you follow me please to page 4. Your rent comparables, did you select these yourself for the purpose of this assignment?
Yes, I felt that they were comparable, yes.
Okay, and just to be clear, the only one in our subject area is comp 4, is that correct?
It looks like it, yes.
Okay, just to be clear, comp 1 is in Garden City, comp 2 is in Mission Industrial, and then comp 3 is in South Point. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
Okay, and comp 4 is very good. It's close by, so no issue there. But just to put some attention on 100 Southview. Now, this I couldn't help but notice that this comparable, if you look at the average monthly rent, it is quite a bit higher than the other comps. Do you think that might be drawing the lease rate up on average in terms of what you've modeled here for the subject?
It's just showing a range. It's not taken into consideration when it's the rent comparables are just showing a range. Those rents did not directly go into establishing the 1319.
Okay, no, it's interesting because if you remove that outlier, we're actually within about 1.5%, so we're not far on an average. But just to be very clear, 100 Southview is in Waverly West, and our subject is in Transcona. So this is about 25 kilometers away. Is that safe to say?
It is farther away. Newer apartment buildings typically rent for a similar amount.
Okay. Do you think that the rental market in Waverly West typically is higher than the rental rates around Harborview and Transcona? Would that be safe to say?
I couldn't say for sure.
Okay, that's fine. Now, and then it does, just to be very, very clear, that property they have garages, individual garages, patios, porches, and driveways. Correct? You've seen that property, 100 Southview. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So expense comparables. I think we've both agreed at 41.59. So I will not belabor that point, but 333 Ward, that's one that comes up a fair bit. You're aware that property has individual indoor garages, fitness center, social rooms, outdoor patios, elevators, and it is in South St. Vital. Are you aware of that?
333 Ward has individual indoor parking.
they have individual garages on site. You can actually, if you look very closely at your
board.
Yeah, if you have a look at your photo, you can see in the almost the bottom right corner there. If you've ever been to 333 Ward, you'd be aware of that. They do have individual garages.
I'm not sure.
Okay. And 718 Beach, now that's only 6 units. I don't know much about that sale. I do know that the appliances were included and it was fully occupied, but it is much smaller. So did you account for economies of scale when you included this in your report today?
They're just a point of reference.
Okay. All right. So now, Mr. Chair, I do have cap rate rebuttal evidence for the assessors for page 7. I can just speak to that verbally if you'd like, but you've all been provided with that. Would you like me to proceed with my question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So to be very clear, we've included the municipal board order A118-431, and Mr. Wong, I think you're aware that order states that effectively properties that were purchased with the intention to renovate are not appropriate to use for to create a cap rate study, because typically properties that are purchased with the intention to renovate are not typical of properties with stabilized income in place. Is that your understanding of that order?
No. I mean, can I see the order?
Sure. Yeah, it's so it's been provided.
Sorry, Mr. Story, is this part of your rebuttal at all?
This is part of the rebuttal, yes. Yeah.
I haven't shared that with anybody yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So
Okay.
would you like everybody to have both of the pieces that you've submitted then?
If you would, please. Thank you.
Sure. Just give me one moment and I can distribute that. It should be there for you now, Doug.
Kara, do we have to get out of it and then go back in?
You might need to refresh it. Yeah, I've just dropped it in there now, and I'll be sending it to you right away, Mr. Wong. Okay, Mr. Wong, I've just sent it to you by email, and all of the panel members should now have access to it.
Okay, is this I just want to make sure I've properly got it, the applicant cap rate study?
Yes, so it's just, the file is named 21-471, applicant assessor. And
Is that the original hearing date, October 28th?
what?
The hearing date is erroneous on that cover page, but that is the document. Yeah, it's the yeah. Sorry about that. That is the rebuttal evidence assessor capitalization rates.
Thank you.
I don't seem to have that one. Is that in the February 1st meeting? Oh, no, there it is. It showed up. Yeah, I got it.
So we've included.
Sorry, just before you start, Jarrett, you had sent 2 documents.
Yes.
So if you want to specify which one you're speaking to, the panel and the assessor have them as rebuttal 1 and rebuttal 2 in the order that you submitted them.
Okay, so this will be rebuttal 1. Thank you, Kara. So this will be rebuttal 1, and effectively, we've shared the municipal board order that states that we should not consider cap rates derived on sales where there was intent to renovate. That board order is there for your perusal. Further to that, we see that on Roach, Talbot, Maxwell, those 3 sales, that they were indeed purchased with the intention to renovate. We have supporting communique with the owners in that submission. So we are suggesting that those cap rates not be considered. And as you are all well aware, on Ward, we have direct evidence supporting a cap rate for 5.13. We have a full income approach and supporting documents. The assessor does not have a workup or supporting documents for their cap rate. So that is my rebuttal to the cap rate table in general. Now, there is a further issue, and this is submission 2, I suppose, and it speaks to the same matter, 500 Portage. So
okay, I guess, can we speak about the first one first?
Sure. Yeah.
If you look on page 6, you're asking me, it's like, my understanding of that. And if you look at page 6.
Yeah.
In the second large paragraph there, near the bottom portion of it, it says that the board does not accept that any intention to renovate should disqualify a property sale. So in my view, that means that just because it was intended to renovate, it doesn't disqualify the property sale. And in my experience with looking at some appraisals, appraisals do use cap rates that were where some properties were intended for renovation. So that's how I look at this, and even so I feel it's appropriate.
Okay, and just very, very clearly on page 7, the order does state cap rates determined from the existing income stream of any property purchased with an intention to renovate or convert to condominium should not be considered. So, and this is because and again, I'm quoting, these purchasers do not have the typical motivations, and a cap rate calculation is likely lower as it does not consider the post-renovation income model for a return on total investment. So effectively, when somebody purchases an asset where there was an intention to renovate, effectively to raise rents, they're buying an economic opportunity rather than the income in place of an existing asset. So that is my submission. We can disagree on it, but the board, in my mind, the municipal board has ordered quite decisively on that, and I do submit that to the board for consideration. Now, speaking to this once again, 500 Portage you've included here. Now, 500 Portage was absolutely, this is a prime example of a property that was purchased with the intention to renovate. This is the property that was formerly known as Colony Square. I used to work there, so I know this property quite well. I've included an article from 2016 on how this property was to be upgraded over 10 years. Now, I want to be very clear that this property also includes 270 underground stalls, 428 apartments, and over 83,000 square feet of commercial space. So this property, on first blush, that cap rate of 4% appears quite low, but it is absolutely due to the fact that this property was purchased with the intention to renovate. So it's the same argument, and I just want to point that out because you've included 500 Portage here, and that was a redevelopment opportunity. You can, if you're aware of that property, you know that they've done substantial work. So that's my submission on your cap rates, and then just again, this is post-reference material. The real estate forum chart from Altus that you're showing in page 8. Though you did mention in the previous hearing that you want to point out that this was part of a discussion regarding the entirety of the universe of multifamily at the time, and it does include properties purchased with the intention to renovate, which is why it would appear depressed based on compared to our study.
So you're telling me that Altus included properties that were intended to renovate in their cap rate study?
This is not a cap rate study. This is the appraisal side of our office, the RVA, did a presentation to the Winnipeg Real Estate Forum, and this shows cap rates in the universe, but it includes properties purchased with the intention to renovate. We're quite clear. We have a directive from the municipal board that for the purpose of assessment, we are not to use properties purchased with the intention to renovate, as they typically indicate an atypical motivation by the purchaser. So
So are you telling me that Altus's appraisal division has different cap rates than the assessment division?
I'm saying that these cap rates include properties that were purchased with the intention to renovate, and that's not appropriate to include in cap rates for assessment purposes, as the edict is provided to us by the municipal board. So, okay, so that's our position there. That's a single slide from a larger forum presentation. It's post-reference, and I think it's been presented here in a way that is not wholly appropriate, so I want to speak to that.
Why is that slide post-reference?
Well, if you look at the date on it, it says May 30th, 2018, doesn't it?
Oh, okay.
And our reference date is April 1, 2018. Would that not be post-reference? Yeah.
I would just look at the 2017 year. The cap rate is 4.5%, which is, I guess, well before April 1st, 2018.
Sure, that's fine. Again, it does include properties purchased with the intention to renovate.
Yeah, Mr. Victoria,
yep.
If I can interrupt here, I was saying
yes.
This is a retrospective look at previous cap rates and not
sure.
a look at cap rates that were post-reference year. So I don't see it being post-reference year material.
Okay, that's fair. Okay, and then the balance of your brief here is are the marketing photos and the permits. So I believe that those are all of my questions, and I thank you.
Okay, Brent, do you have any questions of the assessor, I guess?
I have no questions, thank you.
Okay, Doug, any questions of the assessor?
No, my question that I answered, thank you.
Okay, and I have no questions, so Mr. Story, you can proceed with your main brief.
Thank you, sir. Okay, so again, this property is in West Transcona, 1402 Ravelston. I visited this property. I've visited it twice now. So these are some of my photos. The exteriors are mine. Some of the interiors are marketing photos that should be the same as the ones used by the assessor. We would best describe this property as a new multifamily building. Again, West Transcona, it's wood framed. It's townhouse style with 4 buildings on site. Each building has 18 rental units and is 3 stories tall for a total of 72 units, broken down as 56 2-bedroom units and 16 3-bedroom units. We do note that the parcel is irregular. The property's units are on average approximately 994 square feet. And we do notice that there's a great deal of new development in West Transcona, though there has traditionally been a dearth of density and rental properties, but there's a fair bit of competition coming up now, specifically in the Park City Commons area, which is actually right down the street on Transcona Boulevard. Transcona Boulevard turns into Ravelston at Plessis, I believe. So now we note that there are small balconettes on these suites, but there are no common amenities. There are controlled entrances, so there's no hallways, no elevators. So it is indeed townhouse style, and we believe that this property was added to the roll erroneously as a res app versus a commercial row house, which is more typical of this style of construction. So in terms of the potential net market income, the assessors applied a potential income of $1,139,616. This equates to an average rent per suite, as we've established, of $1,319 per month, though we have not been provided a breakdown of the allotment to a 2-bedroom versus a 3-bedroom. Again, this figure is theoretical, but does seem somewhat high when we contrast it to the CMHC reports that would have been available to knowing purchasers and market participants at the reference date of April 1/18. So I've included the excerpt from the rental market report from CMHC from 17. You can see that at the reference date, 2-bedroom apartments were on average renting for $1,107, with 3-bedroom apartments renting on average for $1,390. So we do note, and I've mentioned this a number of times here, that there's limited data regarding the rental universe in Transcona at the reference date. as there was a historical dearth of rental units in the neighborhood. This is evidenced on my page 8. If you look at Zone 8, the amount of units are actually it's the least dense in terms of rental units by zone in the city of Winnipeg, though there is new development coming up now, a fair bit. So we've looked at the market to determine an appropriate rate. We've established again that 2-bedroom units were 1,107 and 1,309 for 3 bedrooms. But our research has indicated that an average rent of $1,200 per month for the 2-bedroom units and $1,400 per month for the 3-bedroom units is appropriate. This equates to a potential net income of $1,075,200 per annum, or an average monthly rent of $1,244. Now, I do note with interest that if we remove the outlier on Southview in Waverly from the assessor's rent study, we are actually within 1.5% of each other in terms of the rent. We're about I think $16 or $18 off. So we're extremely close. Now, I apologize for jumping around, but if you do follow me to page 14, I have a comparable rent study. I've tried to stay in the general vicinity, and I've looked at properties with similar attributes, similar suite mixes where appropriate. I will point your attention to 875 Camille. We note that those are all 3-bedroom suites. They do have garages, so in terms of their amenities, they would be considered superior. And those average monthly rents are $1,400. So in our mind, that does support the $1,400 for the 3-bedroom units. We have a property on Ivy Bridge, again, very close. DeVries is a little further away, but reasonably comparable. And 7 to 18 Beach, again, that's that small 6-plex that we looked at previously. But if you look at the actual average monthly rent, we do see a range between $1,225 and $1,400. $1,400 being driven up slightly by the fact that all the units are 3-bedroom. So we believe that an average monthly rent, given our suite mix, given the competitive market that has now emerged in Transcona West of $1,244.44 is supported. So we have included that in our calculation. Now, in terms of vacancy and collection loss, we note again that CMHC reports that the average 2- and 3-bedroom vacancy is between 2.6 and 2.9%. This does not factor in collection loss, but absent of robust data on this specific property because it's built in 2020, we are deferring to this to 3% in our calculation, which I do not believe is in dispute. So 3% is the input that we've used in our valuation. In terms of expenses, our typical method of determining the appropriate expense ratio is to stabilize and normalize the reported expenses over a 3-year period at a minimum. In the absence of this data, we would look to market averages for the purpose of modeling appropriate ratios. Effectively, we would typically use 42% in our modeling based on our internal studies. However, we recognize that the assessor's 41.59% is appropriate and not in dispute. So we're well within range there. So we are accepting that figure. In terms of the cap rate, we believe that the assessor's cap rate of 5% is too low. So we have applied a cap rate of 5.25, which is commensurate with our cap rate study with which you've all been provided. Typically, without adjustment, properties that are bracketed in the newer, what we'll call newer category, so newer than 1998, are typically applied a 5.25% cap rate. Now, it's interesting because in past cycles, commercial row houses were applied no less than 6% by the city of Winnipeg. And the reason for this is commercial row houses typically are not the most economical use of land. They tend to be built on a spread out footprint as opposed to going vertical like a typical apartment. And if you have multiple buildings, you have multiple systems to maintain. So typically they were considered to carry a higher risk and were considered just wholesale a 6% cap rate by the city of Winnipeg. Now, when we look at the the universe of commercial row houses in the city of Winnipeg. They are typically a little bit older. They are wood frame, typically, like our subject, but we've elected not to adjust our cap rate upwards to capture the fact that this is a commercial row house, but have stayed with our 5.25%, which we believe is appropriate, if not somewhat optimistic. So with all of that being said, the resulting market value at our reference date of April 118 is calculated to be 11,603,497, rounded to 11,603,000, or approximately 160,000 per suite. So we do ask respectfully that the board adjust the value at the April 1 reference date to not exceed 11,603,000. Page 11 has my workup. You can see how we got to our figure. My appendices, you've seen my comparable rent study. Okay, and I have marketing photos of our subject beginning on page 17. Those would be, I believe those are from the same source as the assessor. So you've seen these. You can see that they are indeed new. I also have rent photos of my rent comps, though, to see that they are indeed appropriate. So market rent comp 1 is on Camille. These are the ones that are 3 bedrooms. You can see they have individual garages. I would suggest that having an individual garage is certainly an amenity that people are would typically find more desirable, and can't help but notice on a day like today that would be that'd be as true as ever. Comp 2 is Ivy Bridge. It's more of a traditional apartment, but again would be competing for the same rental clientele. You can see the interiors; they're new. And then 2106 Degrees is market comp 3. So that's all there. Oh, and I'm sorry, market comp 4 is 718 Beach, and I've included the marketing photos there as well. So that's all there for your perusal, along with our cap rate study and the rebuttal evidence that we've submitted. And again, we do respectfully submit that the value not exceed 11,603,000. And barring any questions, that's my presentation. And I thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. Wong?
For on your page 8 for your potential net market rent.
Yeah.
It's indicating, I guess, the 2-bedroom rents being 1107 and 1390 for 3 bedrooms.
Yeah, that's on CMHC on the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would that include all age categories, including like units from say 1900?
Sure, it would also include every area of town. So that would be, it is a broad view. So it would include areas where the rents are much lower and the rents are much higher. I believe what CMHC strives to do here is give us a sense of the general market. And as I mentioned, there isn't robust data on Transcona on the day. So a reasonable investor would have to look to the larger rental universe. I'll also mention that on 3 bedrooms, typically there are some very large 3-bedroom townhouse style properties. So ours at 994 square feet are actually fairly small. So I think that it does give us a fair indication of the range, to be certain.
So it does include properties that are units that are 100 years older than the subject property.
Well, and a year old. Sure, it includes everything in the study.
And I guess on your page 14.
Yeah.
How did you come up with that average of 1244? Because like when I do the average of the comparables, the average is 1292.
The average of the comparables, got it right here. So the average of my comparables is $1,292. That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, but you're using 1244.
I'm using 1244, and the way that we get there is by applying 1,400 to the 3 bedrooms, and then 1,200 to the 2 bedrooms, which I believe is supported by both CMHC and our rent on Camille, showing us that those are all 3 bedrooms, and they're renting at $1,330 at the reference date, and they might even be slightly superior. They do include garages, so I think that's well supported.
I guess I'd like to provide some rebuttal as well with regards to the market rents.
Okay.
Carrie, did you get that or?
Yeah, I just want to confirm because it was a little vague in the body here, but yes, that email that you just sent, that's what you can submit. Okay, I can share that with everyone. Just give me a moment.
Does everyone have the document?
Not yet. I'll let you know when they do.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, got it.
You've got it, yes. It just takes a minute to share it with 3 people, 3 different ways. Okay, Mr. Story, I've just sent it to you by email. All the panel members should have it in your folders. If you can confirm the remote panel members that you see it there.
That's the AT&T rebuttal one.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's say AT&T.
I do not have it yet, but I will keep refreshing my screen.
And I've got it, Kara.
Okay, great. Thank you.
There we go. I have it now. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Assessor, everybody has your rebuttal evidence.
Okay. We go to page 11. If you go to page 11,
Okay.
I was just saying, like, you know, the applicant used the general overall market rent, which includes like all the apartments, and I'm not sure how accurate that would be for trying to get market rents for a brand new building. The same report on page 11 shows rents for newer buildings. You can see at the bottom at the 2005 plus properties, like newer buildings in all areas of Winnipeg. It shows that in October 2017 that the 2-bedroom rents are $13.92 and the 3-bedroom rents are $14.70. And I just wanted to sort of show that the market rents might be higher than what the applicant has indicated, and it could be higher than what the model has applied at $13.19 per unit. So that is the extent of that document.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, may I ask one question on this piece of evidence?
Sure. It's the city's rebuttal on your evidence, but one question, yes.
Sure. So this is the entirety of the rental universe, and this is the new stock that you're referencing. However, we've seen in your own rental table, is it not fair to say that the property that you used on Southview commands a higher rent than the one property that you've used in the Grassy neighborhood, which is closer to Transcona West? So is it fair to say that different properties in different areas of town command higher or lower rental rates. Is that a fair assumption?
From my experience, the newer apartment buildings are similar, depending on whether it's more luxury or more average. I believe that looking at the newer rents that CMHC has presented for newer buildings is probably more accurate than looking at rents that include apartments from 1900.
Okay, so rents in Transcona would be directly comparable without adjustment to rents in Waverly West. That's your position? Just so I'm clear.
Okay. This is not really getting into the rebuttal evidence as presented.
Fair enough.
You're questioning him on his previous brief, the comparables in his brief.
Okay, that's fair. I think I've made my point. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And okay. I guess one last question regarding your brief.
Yeah, go ahead. It's your,
on page 11.
Yep.
Your value is at 11,603,000, which works out to approximately 161,000 per unit. 333 Ward sold at 175,000 per unit. Are you suggesting that this property is worth less than a 2006 built building, which is 333 Ward?
100%, absolutely. I believe that sale price supports our value today. Ward has individual garages. Again, Ward is in a different part of town. I do believe that different areas do command higher values. That's the underlying supposition of land economics. And also, we have to recognize that there are amenities at Ward, right? There's a fitness center, there's a tenant area where our subject. These are contained townhouse style units. So they're different. But I think that, yes, absolutely. I think that value is supported based on what you've submitted here today.
That would be all my questions.
Okay. Doug, any questions of the applicant?
No, my question's been answered. Thank you.
Okay. Brent, any questions of the applicant?
I have no questions. Thank you.
All right, and I have no questions either. So then that concludes this this property. And I think it would be, before getting to the last property, appropriate to take a break till about 10:30 or so.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Thank you. You as well.
All right, welcome back. We've come to the last property on today's agenda, which is 170 Salto Crescent. So I believe we have a new applicant. So can you swear him in?
Actually, we have a new assessor as well, so I'll start with him. Mr. Assessor, for the record, please state your name.
Arif Das Mohammed.
And do you affirm the evidence you will present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And Mr. Applicant, for the record, please state your name.
Rod Slaughter.
Do you affirm the evidence you'll present today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
All right. So, Mr. Assessor, you can proceed then on 170 Salto Crescent.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, Arif. If I may, similar to earlier this morning, I would like to raise a preliminary matter on 2 pages in the evidence that are post-reference.
Okay. I was just going to get to that.
Okay, thanks, Arif.
Is that the permits again?
Yes, I believe so, yeah.
Okay, well, then our previous
Yeah, I will just talk to you in general terms of what the permits comprise of. I won't speak to the values. I'll just say what was built in.
Okay, and the board will put no weight on the value then.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so this is a supplemental tax assessment due to the addition. So the roll number is 0756016820. The address is 170 Salt Hill Crescent. The roll year is 2021. Reference date is April 1st, 2018. Assessed value is $14,482,000. Parcel use code is industrial light manufacturing. Number of buildings is 2. Number of premises is 3. Number of stories is 1. Actual years built ranges from 1999 to 2021. Effective year is 2009. Wall heights range from 20 feet to 42 feet. Construction is reinforced concrete frame. Zoning is M2 manufacturing general. Land area is 239,613 square feet or 5.5 acres. Plant area is 135,864 square feet. Gross floor area is 143,513 square feet. Same with the leasable area. Land to plant area is 1.76 to 1. On the next page, you can see that there were 2 sales registered approximately 21 years ago in the amount of just under 2.8 million. On the following page, I have 2 tables with comparables. So this property was appealed at the board for both the realty and business assessment. So the first table comprises of what was appealed, what comparables were utilized for the 2020 assessment. So if you turn to page 9, sorry, I'm going to go back and forth pages here. So on page 9 is the aerial overhead view of the original building. And then on page 11 is what we had assessed it for 2020, and that's for $8,669,000. If you look on page 12, that was our workup there. You could see that we had rents of $6.53 for the original main floor and the mezzanine for $4.80 per square foot. And then our vacancy rate was 2.5, expenses were 2%, shortfall was 3.75, and our cap was 6.3%. On the following page is the board order from then for the 2020 assessment. And you could see that the board sided with the assessment and taxation department for that. On the following page is the 2020 business assessment. And you could see there right in the middle, our base ARV that we were using for net rents per square foot was $6.53 and $4.80, just like what we used in the realty assessment. But this time, the board decided to go with the applicant's evidence as per page 16. So the applicant's evidence was on page 15. So here the applicant used for their rents $5.50 for the original main level and $4 for the mezzanine per square foot, $4 per square foot net rent. And again, the board sided with the applicant's evidence in this case. So what we did for our, sorry, give me 1 second. So what we did for our workup, which is on page 4, I'll get to that in a second. So I just wanted to make that clear that those rents that the board agreed to in the business assessment is what we are utilizing for our workup. But I'll just get to our workup in a second. So the table, back to page 3, the table number 2 are the comparables that we utilize for the new edition. So so you'll notice that all the comparables are fairly new. They range in age from 1989 to 2014. The wall heights range from 20 feet to 28 feet. Leasable areas range from 30,000 square feet to 61,000 square feet. And then net rents range from $8.49 to $9.95 per square foot. So on the following page is our workup. That would be page 4. So there you see that we're utilizing the board ordered square foot rents there for the main floor, which is $5.50, $4 for the mezzanine, and then this is the addition. The next line there, it's 52,000 square foot, or sorry, about 52,600 square foot. We're using a net rent of $9.13 for that. Again, we've kept our vacancy loss at 2%, our expenses at vacancy loss at 2.5%, our expenses at 2%, our shortfall at $3.75 per square foot, and our cap rate at $6.3%. Now, in regards to vacancy, you'll note on my appendix, page 15 and page appendix 16, the Johnson report is indicating that in Murray Industrial Park, there is zero vacancy for the year end 2017. However, we're still allowing for 2.5%, and even though it is owner occupied. So taking all those parameters, we get a rounded capitalized value and assessed value of $14,482,000. This is an increase of $5,813,000 from the 2020 roll due just to the addition. And on page 8, is the map of the subject and the comparables that we're utilizing. Below that is the parcel boundaries. On page 10, you can see the building again with the new addition. The addition has wall heights of 42 feet, so it's quite high. And again, just generally in regards to the permits, page 8. So what was added to the improvement was a foundation to accommodate a 52,592 square foot building, and the building itself with 42 foot height walls, and again, a leasable area of 52,592 square feet. So as such, we believe that the assessed value of $14,482,000 for the original improvement plus the addition, we believe that we've been pretty consistent from our 2020 assessment, and we believe that we've been fair and equitable. And I respectfully ask that the board confirm this value. And I'm open to questions now.
Okay, questions, Mr. Slaughter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Das Mohammed, for a thorough analysis. And Mr. Chairman, I do have some rebuttal evidence as well. So maybe if I may move through the questions first and then submit the rebuttal evidence after.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Das Mohammed, did you have a chance to inspect the subject property?
I didn't, but we had a field inspection done. That was done. Give me 1 second. In August 2021, we had a colleague go out there and they inspected. And I believe at the time they didn't have an occupancy permit. They were waiting for some additional machinery to come in, and therefore they didn't have the occupancy permit. They just had the addition was built though.
Okay, from that inspection, then your colleague would be aware that the addition is to serve the exact same utility as the existing building, which is to house a production line. Would you agree?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, on your page 4, I believe it was, you walk through the market rent analysis, and you have used the rents that I guess the owner had proposed for the 2020 original assessment for the original portion of the building, and the Board of Revision agreed to for the business assessment. Just for the board's reference, the realty assessment has been appealed to the municipal board, so that is pending on the original assessment. But Mr. Das Mohammed, you applied $5.50 to the original building and a lower rate, as we'd agree, to the mezzanine.
Right.
Now, the addition constitutes about a 50% increase in area, and yet the value has doubled. Is that correct?
Yes, it's a newer building. It's got, like I said, 42-foot wall heights, and it's new, yes.
Okay, thank you. Now, you mentioned 3 comparisons for the addition solely. So you're just looking at the addition portion because we've already established what the legacy building might command in the market.
Correct.
And those comparisons, just to be clear, there's 2 at 200 Discovery and 1 at 78 Hutchings. These are all buildings that have access for the units, ample parking, ample loading, office finish, etc. Is that correct?
Yes.
And the subject addition solely that you're comparing that to is simply a rear addition, very narrow, very long, no separate access, no additional parking, no separate office.
No,
Would
it's
you
just
agree
in
that-
addition to, yeah, it's just in addition to the building.
Okay, so it's not really an apples to apples comparison to take kind of standalone units or standalone buildings and compare it to a rear addition. Would you agree?
Yes, I couldn't find comparables to just, compare the premise to premise.
Yeah, difficult because the market, of course, would view this as a whole.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just to be clear, of all the comparisons that you've shown then in your evidence, only 2 would be over 100,000 square feet, the subject being close to 140,000 square feet. Is that correct?
Yes. The reason we separated is because, well, first of all, the table 1 is from a previous assessment, last year's assessment. So the reason we separated is because there is different wall heights, there are different times, construction times on them, and the building height of the new addition is quite high.
Okay, thanks. In general, though, would you agree, all other things being equal, that economies of scale would dictate a downward adjustment to a larger property in comparison to smaller properties?
In general.
Okay, thank you. Would you agree that the subject property has a abnormally low land to building ratio at this point?
It's just under 2 at this point after the addition. Yes. Before the addition, maybe it was average, but right now, maybe yes.
And would, in your experience, would that require any sort of adjustment in comparison to properties that have normal?
It would depend on what the use is. Like, this is owner occupied, so I take it that they're fine with they spent quite a bit of money building the addition. They didn't build any parking spots. I don't think an adjustment was necessary.
Okay. In my opinion. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, in my opinion, sorry.
Yeah, you'd agree that the exercise this morning is to determine a value in the view of the market, though, not just the owner, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Vacancy allowance, 2.5%. Last cycle, you agree that it was at 4%.
For 2020?
19.
Oh,
yeah,
18,
no, yeah, last cycle.
Sorry, I do not have the last cycle.
Okay, no problem.
Available.
You mentioned your evidence on page 15 of your appendix. This is coming from the Johnson report.
Correct.
And if I could just pause for a moment to let the board refer to that chart again. And you mentioned that in Murray Park, the subject's location, the vacancy is actually 0.
Correct.
But it has been 0. Yeah, exactly, according to the graph. But it has been 0, as you can see, for a number of years, correct?
Correct.
So there's been no change at all. And you would agree that Murray Park is a little different than most industrial parks in the city. It, as opposed to an average manufacturing to typical industrial ratio of about 1 to 3, Murray Park is 2 to 3. It's 2/3 manufacturing, very little investment type product.
I know a lot of buildings are owner occupied in that industrial park.
And that's exactly what I wanted to shed light on. In fact, when we look at this chart, which is looking at single tenant investment activity, there is none in Murray Park, because any manufacturing there, single occupant buildings are actually owner occupied. So that may, cause some concern when we're looking at a 0% vacancy in that area. But you would agree that the overall vacancy at the bottom of the chart between 2015 and 17, the two reference dates, has actually increased slightly. 7.48.
Yes, but a lot of most of that can be attributed to four industrial parks, basically 3 to 4 industrial parks.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, on page 4 of your appendix, you do quote, I think, some market reports. Sorry, let me just turn here. Yes, on page 4, you have an excerpt from the Collier's cap rate study. And again, this is just a broker study. I don't expect either of us to put much weight, but just to be clear, for industrial properties, they're suggesting that the high is 7.25% and a low of 6.5%. Is that correct?
Correct. It's a little different from our cap rate study, but yes, that's what they are indicating.
Yeah, and you've applied 6.3%.
Correct.
Okay. In your opinion, does being landlocked, where you are dependent on a neighboring property for access to your property, does that increase investor risk?
If it was an investment property, yes, with multi-tenants or a single tenanted property, but this is owner occupied, so I'm not sure what from the addition, they just looking at the parcel, the addition, there used to be a I guess access to the side building, but there isn't now because of the addition, so they just have the one access in.
Yeah, it's over an adjacent property. And again, the exercise by legislation this morning is to determine the value in the eyes of the market. So would you agree that that's a concern?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, thanks very much, Mr. Das Mohammed. Thanks for your responses. I'll pause if the board has any questions before my rebuttal evidence, Mr. Chair.
Okay, is there any questions, Brent?
No, I have no questions. Thank you.
Okay, Doug?
No questions for me, thank you.
Okay, you can present your rebuttal then. Kara, do we have that?
It should be loading now. It's called item 4, file 21-469 applicant rebuttal. It's in the folder now, so you should see it shortly.
Item 4, file to an applicant rebuttal. I got it.
And I've sent it to you by email.
I have it. Yes, thank you.
And I assume I have to refresh, Kara?
I think so. Yes.
Yes, I have it now.
Perfect.
All right. So, Mr. Slaughter, then you can proceed with your rebuttal evidence.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just bringing a little bit more light to some of the comparisons. Mr. Das Mohammed has done a good job of bringing forward some comparisons, and it is rather difficult for a property like this, but I just thought I'd bring some further attention. So the very first comparison shown in the city's evidence is 117 King Edward Street East. And this is actually part of a flex office warehouse property. You can see in the picture here, the tenant is Worldpac Canada, distributor of auto parts, far smaller than the subject property. I would consider this one of the weaker comparisons. The second is also on King Edward. It's 999 King Edward. And this one I would really caution about as a comparison. It's Enterprise Rent-A-Car. And in addition to their unit, which is 19,500 square feet, they have a massive fenced and paved compound for their cars. You can see that in the photos in the map below. So again, I wouldn't really consider this a very strong comparison. The third, decent comparison, 58 Hutchings. It is quite a bit smaller. Tenant is Michelin. They have a 10-year lease signed in 2008. So the rent quoted in the city's evidence is actually a step up as of 2017. We work for the owner of this property. It has full HVAC, 5% office finish, 7 dock loading doors, built in 1990, 27-foot wall height, and a very similar land to building ratio at 1.74 to 1. Fourth comparison is 1345 Redwood. This was completely redone for the occupant, which is Boeing. They had a requirement because of the demand to expand past their footprint that they have at their owner-occupied location in Murray Park, actually. And they had to lease this property for 2 years. And so the rent amortized all of the work that they had to do for a very short period, which caused the rent to be a little higher than market for this type of property. But otherwise, a good comparison. And the last is 1400 Saskatchewan, older than the property, but it does have an ample parking, large land to building ratio. I would consider this on the lower end of the comparisons. Of the new comparisons, which are being used to compare to the rear addition of the subject property, and off the top, as I mentioned in questioning, I'm not sure if that's an appropriate exercise. It's difficult. I understand what the assessor is saying. But if you're taking one part of a property that's just a rear addition without all of the features, access, office, parking, etc., of the comparisons, it's not really apples to apples. But just overall, 200 Discovery is a new property. The tenants that moved in, the first was Staples and the second was TFI Transport. Again, we work for this property on behalf of the owner Quadrille, so we're aware of the significant tenant inducements which were required to bring Staples from their previous location. Amortized into the lease, high build outs of 15 and 25% for the 2 units, and a massive parking lot with a 2.67 to 1 land to building ratio. Very superior property in my mind. And 78 Hutchings is occupant Selco Automation, 100% HVAC. It's used for, it's kind of a high end manufacturing for programming and automation design. We suspect this may be a leaseback, as the sale for the property occurred at the same time that the lease commenced. As note, if we work through that lease with the sale, on page 8 of my evidence, we'll see that the implied cap rate with a 3.5% vacancy and a 5% non-recovered allowance, 7% total, is 6.5%. So a little bit of interesting background on that property. I have the supporting documents for that comparison. So in summary, when we look at the assessor's comparisons, I would agree with the market rent applied to the original building, $5.50. But I do not agree that using these superior properties to value just the addition is an appropriate exercise. We should be looking at the property as a whole, and again with the comparison shown here and consideration to some of the site-specific factors of those comparisons, I think the city's rent is slightly excessive. Economies of scale has to be considered when all of the things are equal. That's supported by the municipal board in numerous decisions, but I think we're all in agreement with that concept.
Okay, we seem to have gone past the rebuttal now. So you were on questions for the applicant, I believe. Then we'll get into your presentation in general.
Okay, yeah, sure. This is just rebuttal on the assessor's brief.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Mr. Chairman. So if I may, then I'll just skip ahead to page 12 of the rebuttal. And this is regarding the assessor's 4 comparisons for the capitalization rates. And we feel that 2 of them are valid comparisons. They're at 7.44% and 8%. Inferior properties, though, so I wouldn't use them necessarily as direct comparisons. But the other 2 comparisons, Mr. Chairman, we do have some concern with that we've raised before, and I'd just like to touch upon that again. The first you will see on page 14 is 90 Park Lane. And it actually was owner-occupied, or it was vacant at the time of sale, and then it was owner-occupied by the purchaser. So it's not really a valid cap rate in that way, in our opinion. You can see it was unencumbered at the time of sale. And the second, 1100 Waverly, in our opinion, is a very different type of property. This is more of a flex warehouse with a large kind of more commercial component, a restaurant, education resource center, laser tag, etc. It's a very different type of property. So I just wanted to bring light to those 2 properties in the cap rate comparisons. Supporting documentation is included in the rebuttal, and that, Mr. Chairman, completes our comments on the city's evidence.
Okay. Brent, is there any questions after the rebuttal?
I have no questions, thank you.
Okay, Doug?
No questions for you, thank you.
All right. I have no questions. So now, Mr. Slaughter, you can begin your brief. I just have one question with Kara. What is labeled as the applicant brief seems to be another copy of the cap rate study.
Oh, let's have a look. I agree with you. Sorry about that. Let me see. Okay, my apologies. I think it should be in there now. It's just called Salto 170.
Oh, I see it. Yep.
And Doug, it'll be the same for you. Let me know if you don't see it.
I've got it, Kara.
Okay.
I've got it as well.
Mr. Marks.
Oh, I see. Sorry.
You see it too?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, sorry about that. I'm assuming that.
Okay, and Mr. Slaughter, I assume that the non-recoverables will be an issue. If you can just do a quick speed through of something.
Certainly, yeah. I will do, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. So, if everybody has the direct submission now.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So I'll just quickly walk through it. Mr. Das Mohammed has done a good job describing the property. I don't want to waste everybody's time going over things, but I do want to paint a picture of what the story of the property and the addition are. I think best to start, and Mr. Das Mohammed did this as well, is to take a look on page 3 of my evidence. You'll see the aerial photograph of the property prior to September 21 and then after the addition. So at the bottom of the page is prior to. You can see that already it was sitting on a rather constrained land to building ratio, not extraordinarily constrained, but and some of the features of the legacy building at that time that have been a concern from Altus's standpoint in the assessment are that number one, you can see from this photo that the access from Soto, which is on the left side of the picture, is blocked by the adjacent property. They have to travel across the property at 100 Soto that you can see to provide access to their building. There is no access off of what is now known as Wihiri, if I pronounce that right, road. That used to be, I believe, Whitewold, because that's the D&D grounds off to the east. So there's no access from the east. The only access is across an adjacent property. That is a major concern for the market value of this property. It's a separate title for 100 Soto, separate registered owner. Now, in history, the reason why this agreement happened is because there was a common ownership portion by Winpac, the neighbor to the south, in American by Access, the subject occupant. But from a market standpoint, that creates a concern. That's point one.
Point 2, because of the constrained size of the site at the rear of this, off of Soto, they only have room for 3 dock loading doors. And that's a little bit on the low side in comparison to many of the comparable properties that we've considered and we will be considering in evidence. Of course, with that as well as limited parking. The fourth concern with the legacy building was that it was only slab on grade foundation. The piles only existed under the exterior walls and where the central production lines were to be placed. That has caused foundation concerns, heaving and movement that have caused difficulty for the owner. And again, if they had constructed this fresh, A, the location might not be where it was, and secondly, piles would likely have been wise. Now, we move ahead to the addition. And what happened, Mr. Chairman, is that they, because of increased demand, they needed to expand their production line. They have 2 production lines in the existing building, one of which they are actually shutting down. The new production line is slightly larger than the older production lines. And in order to make the new production line fit, they would require 30 meters width. Because of the constrained site size, they only actually had 24 meters to the edge of the street. Number one, they had to go to the city and ask for a variance for many reasons. They don't have the required parking. They require 136 stalls. They only have 56. They don't have the required setback even to make this fit. And they wouldn't have the required landscaping on the foundation or site. So the city did allow the variance, but they asked for many things in return as far as the aesthetics along the east side and some other factors in the construction of the addition. So what they're left with is essentially, imagine this, they require 30 meters width for the equipment. They don't have it. And with the city's permission, what they did is build up. That's why the ceiling height is higher at the subject property. If you look to page 4, you'll see photographs of the existing building first, and then looking down the south edge of the building to the addition at the back, and you can see the higher ceiling height. That's simply because they couldn't fit the supporting equipment alongside the production line as they typically would. Let me be clear about one thing. This addition provides the exact same utility as the existing building. It's to house a production line. Because of constraints in the land size and the requirements of the city, certain things had to happen in its construction that have no bearing, in our opinion, on the market value. On page 5, you can see photographs, first of the existing building inside. I have had a chance to inspect this property numerous times, actually, because I've worked for them in the past, and I was just out there again at the top of January. So you'll see a couple pictures of the existing building, standard light manufacturing warehouse, and the production line on the right-hand side. And then below, you can see what the addition looks like. So slightly higher ceiling height, and that's basically because of the required equipment for the production line. Same utility. I have some pictures of where they pointed out the foundation concerns are, where they've had heaving between the exterior wall and the slab on grade. And then you can see at the bottom, they had to go right up to the sidewalk on Wahiri on the east side, and that was only allowed because of a variance. Now, from a market perspective, if an owner-occupant receives a variance, that still raises a bit of concern for the next occupant. So again, these are things that I think speak to market value, notwithstanding the major concern of not having access to the property except over a neighboring property. I think that sums up the story, Mr. Chairman, of the addition, how it was constructed and why. And what we're left with today now is a 140,000 square foot light manufacturing facility with a few problems that I mentioned, and a land to building ratio now of only 1.76 to 1. So with this as background, we then move into our income approach to value. So we have no disagreement on the area as applied by the city. And we've looked at 14 rental comparisons to look at the appropriate market rent for the building as a whole. We agree with what the city has done for the original building now, but looking at the whole is a different matter. So I'll go through these comparisons. I'll try and go as quickly as possible, Mr. Chairman. I will point out that for each one, we list most of the relevant information in chart and then describe it in the subsequent paragraphs. And we have photographs of each comparison starting on page 22. The first comparison is on Hutchings Avenue, constructed 1990, single occupant, much smaller than the subject property at 57,500 square feet. And the rent is $6.75. It has a similar land to building ratio and a 27-foot wall height. A good comparison, but needs adjustment because of the significant size difference. The second comparison is 190 Omens Creek, built in 97. Again, much smaller than the subject property and leases for $6.23 a square foot. Now, in this case, there's 2 units in one building. This is the larger of the 2 units, so the land to building ratio is not really applicable in this case. The third, I think, is one of our best comparisons. The third is 1870 Sargent, and it was owned by Magellan Aerospace. And they then put it on the market, and it ended up being purchased by Standard Aero. Now, this property is a very good comparison because it is a light manufacturing, but for the aerospace industry, aerospace industry. So it has a high degree of mechanicals and electrical. Single occupant, 70,000 square feet, so about half the size. And despite their asking rent, they managed to attain $5.42 a square foot as the arm's length rent. This property has a 1.5 to 1 land to building ratio, and similar to the subject property, you have to go across another property to get access to it. So I think it's a great comparison. Now, what's interesting about that property is it actually ended up selling to Standard Aero for $54.84 a square foot. That sale is actually mentioned in the assessor evidence in one of the broker's reports, and I think it's something that we need to keep in the back of our mind when we look at the overall value of the property. We've worked through the calculations on that with the actual rent, the actual sale price. The implied cap rate would have been 8.44%. Just to point out, it's a very good comparison as far as being entirely sprinklered, climate controlled, card access, power and vacuum drops throughout. So we put a little more weight on that comparison. The fourth is 760 Pandora East, 1997 construction, smaller than the subject property, single occupant, very large land to building ratio. But like the subject, located in kind of a rear position, although it does have its own access. The roll number of the assessment includes the access from Pandora, but it's kind of located behind the large manufacturing facility at 770 Pandora. So an interesting comparison to the subject in that respect. Number 5 is 410 Debates, 2004 construction, single occupant, much smaller than the subject property, 2.32 to 1 land to building ratio, so superior in that aspect, and leases for $6.16 a square foot. Next, we have 160 Omens Creek, slightly older property, high ceiling height, larger land to building ratio, smaller size, leases for $6.57. Then we have 230 Panet, which is now we're getting a little closer to the size as we move up. 95,000 square feet, built in 1996, single occupant, 2.25 to 1 land to building ratio, 30-foot wall height. The stepped up rent as of March 17 is $5.75 a square foot. We can see a rather tight range happening here, and we can see that as we move up in size, typically the rent per square foot will decrease. 11 Fultz is 100,000 square feet, 1990 construction, 28-foot ceiling height, 1.81 to 1 land to building ratio, leases for $5 a square foot. 1150 Fife, 108,000 square feet, older though, but leases as of March 18 for $4.50 a square foot, 31-foot wall height, 2.2 to 1 land to building ratio. Next, we have 1345 Redwood. This is the same property that the assessor had mentioned as a comparison, so we're both using this as a comparison. And again, that was a 2-year term that amortized all the required improvements into the lease, so there is a reason why it does stand out a little higher at $6.36 a square foot. Large land to building ratio, 3.86 to 1 land to building ratio as well, large. Next comparison is on the airport lands, 1935 Sargent, 113,000 square feet. Massive land to building ratio, 6.6 to 1. This is Federal Express, or Purolator, sorry, and they lease for $6.36 a square foot. So again, reflective of the large land size. The next comparison I include, but I put very little weight on. You can see it is the outlier. It stands out. $791 a square foot for 200 Began. Very similar in size. It's a newer property. But again, I know this property well because we work for the owner. And the story here is that this was a built-to-suit lease when it originally was constructed in 2001. They went through a massive expansion when they bought a new business. Their demand increased. They were under the gun. They needed space. The escalated time frame to bring that addition as per their requirements caused a much higher cost, which again was amortized into the lease because these are built to suit leases here. So when you understand the background, you have to treat this with a bit of caution. I will note that Municipal Board Order A08006 dealt with that property, 200 Began. The board was aware of the actual rent at the time. It was a 2006 assessment, so the rent at that time was only $6.25 a square foot. The assessor looked to the market, understanding the circumstances of the actual lease. They chose $5.50 a square foot. The appellant went to the market as well, was much lower. They were at $3.05 a square foot. The board, based on the market with full knowledge of the actual lease in place and the background, chose a market rent of $3.75. So, Mr. Chairman, this is why, although we're including it because we're being transparent, there is a reason why it's an outlier. And I suggest a great degree of caution if we're trying to pick that as the one that we're going to use as an indicator. Back to more applicable comparisons, 51 Burma light manufacturing facility, slightly larger at 160,000 square feet, massive land to building ratio, 5.3 to 1, has a huge parking lot, room for expansion. The rent is $5.85 a square foot. And lastly, this is much larger. It's part of a multi-tenant building, but it was considered the Cadillac of warehouse properties because it's completely HVAC and the best of the best quality at the time. And that leases for $4.22 a square foot. That's an inferior property and requires economies of scale adjustment the other way. So in the end, Mr. Chairman, we have a list of comparisons which show an average just under $6 a square foot, median just over $6 a square foot. And we can see that as we move it higher in size, we come lower, typically in per square foot rents. We think that the city's overall market rent now is excessive. I think they were appropriate with the legacy building, but they're now excessive. So on page 14, we summarize our analysis. And we choose a market rent more in line with the comparisons at $6.50 a square foot overall. We do have a mezzanine rate, which is lower like the city, although we're still using their original mezzanine rate of $4.80. They're now using $4. So we're a little different there. I'm on the higher end, but that's fine. The main thing is that the main floor, the plan area, we feel should be $6.50 a square foot. So that is our market rent analysis, Mr. Chairman. For the vacancy allowance, I'll keep this short, but basically we feel that the decrease from last cycle, when it was at 4% down to 2.5%, is not warranted. We saw it in the city's evidence that when we look at the overall market, single tenant buildings haven't seen the decrease in vacancy that would suggest a decrease for that the city's implying. Murray Park itself hasn't changed. It's been zero because there is no single tenant leased properties. That's why it's at zero. But St. James itself is around 8.9%. We have to also keep in mind that when we apply a market vacancy, so this is in the eyes of the market, expecting over the life of the building or the holding period that there will be some periods of vacancy. That's why an owner-occupied property still receives a market vacancy allowance. But we feel that the decrease to 2.5% is not warranted. We feel that when we look at market vacancy and consider collection loss, which is part of the allowance, the vacancy allowance, that the 4% originally applied is more appropriate. Now, Mr. Chairman, I would like to point out something. When I get to the final part of our analysis, which deals with our cap rates, it is based upon both our own study and what's happening in the market. And in our own study, the cap rates, when we develop the income to determine the cap rate on those sales, we're using vacancy allowances of 3.5 or 4%. Okay, so we are being consistent in our approach with how we determine our cap rates by applying 4% here on the vacancy allowance, vacancy and bad debt. Shortfall allowance, we have no contention with. $3.75 a square foot is appropriate based on the operating expenses of the property or typical properties like this. Non-recovered expenses, gentlemen, I know we've gone through this many times from Altus, so I'm going to keep it very short. The exercise today is to determine the value of the property in the eyes of the market. If it was on the market, a potential investor would consider that there will be non-recovered expenses that they can't recover from the tenant. That's the point of the 5%. In our opinion, the original 2% is what was called other, but is more on the structural reserve. It's more on the amortized capital improvements over the life of the property. The 5% is to reflect the non-recovered expenses that are incurred. This is incurred, as you'll see in our study, for both multi-tenant and single-tenant properties, because single-tenant properties, they do incur these kind of expenses, and they do incur vacancy, which requires leasing commissions, which is part of the non-recovered expenses, as established by the appraisal texts and assessing authorities in other jurisdictions. So we do not feel it's appropriate to take a 7% total non-recovered expense allowance historically applied and then reduce that to 2%. Again, the capitalization rates that I'm about to discuss are based on incomes utilizing the full 7%. So if the board was to disagree with Altus on this position and only apply the 2% allowance rather than 7%, we should take a look at the cap rates that we provided you, because they would all go up. I could go on and on about the non-recovered expenses, but I know that you've all heard this before, so I'll stop there. That's the rationale of why we're including it, though. So lastly, we go to our capitalization rate. Now, Mr. Chairman, I'll ask the board and the assessor now to refer to the next document, which was the Altus Group capitalization rate study for industrial properties.
Okay.
And again, I know that we've been through this many times, so I'm going to keep this short as well. I'll go right to our cap rate conclusions on page 13. We looked at 6 transactions. They had a range of between 6.36% and 6.8%. Now, if you recall, the broker studies that we discussed earlier that were in evidence from the city and in evidence from us are a marketing brochure, so we don't put a heck of a lot of weight on it, but they do show a range between 6.5 and 7.25. We're in that range. But keep in mind, we've included a higher vacancy allowance, as we have with the subject, and the 7% non-recovered expenses. I have excluded comparison number 5. That is a portfolio transaction that the city has brought up valid concerns with, and we are now excluding for clarity. So that one's out of the mix. So when we look at these comparisons as a range, and of course, it's hard to take any specific capitalization rate as an indicator because you have to look at the income, the type of property, etc. So we look at ranges, and we find that the 6.3% as applied by the city is inappropriate. That's even before we get to the investor risk that is raised by having a property that is accessed over a neighboring property that is completely landlocked and is currently under the typical parking ratios required by the city. These are things that an investor would be concerned about. These are things that increase the risk. So if our range sits in the mid 6s to high 6s, and that's corroborated by the market reports, we feel that the subject property should be no lower than 6.5%. And that, Mr. Chairman, is if the board includes the requested vacancy allowance and non-recovered expenses. If you exclude our requested non-recovered expenses, that capitalization rate should go up by 40 basis points based on the evidence before you. So we ask for a 6.5% capitalization rate with the NOI as proposed by our analysis. And Mr. Chairman, we then summarize on page 19, where we apply our potential market income, supported by the market.
That's your main brief again?
Oh, sorry. Yes, I'll pause. Now let's please turn back to the original brief. I'm moving too fast now.
All right, go ahead.
You could please turn to page 19 in that brief. You'll see our summary. So the potential net market income, as supported by the market rent evidence before you today, the vacancy allowance of 4% as applied in the previous assessment cycle, and I believe supported by the evidence today, the 7% non-recovered expense allowance, the $3.75 shortfall, which is uncontested, and a 6.5% cap rate. That, Mr. Chairman, implies a value of $12,303,000. That equates to $85.73 a square foot. And again, if we look at the reason for our discussion today, which is the addition of a rear portion of the building that expanded the area by 50% but provides the same utility, we feel that this is a more reasonable value. That concludes our presentation, Mr. Chairman. In appendix, I'll just point out again, there's pictures of each of the rental comparisons and supporting documentation on the assessment of the property, all of which has been discussed already. And so I will conclude then and ask the board to consider the revised value of $12,303,000.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Das Muhammad, do you have questions?
Just a couple of short questions. Mr. Slaughter, the owner has owned this property since 2001, at least?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, just looking at your picture on page 3 at the bottom there, before the addition. Mm-hmm. So if access was an issue, I'm just wondering why they wouldn't have built a access right onto the white wall there, or Whitewalled, I guess it was prior.
It was prior. I didn't know the name changed either. Okay. They've asked the city about that, Mr. Das Muhammad, and they're not allowed. Likely because the width of that road, the traffic on that road, they can't have a curb cut.
Yeah, I think that's all my questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Brent, any questions?
I have no questions. Thank you.
Doug?
Just one, access to that property, just down the property line there?
From the west side?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And there's no other access onto that property wall?
None at all. So Winnipeg is the property to the south. And originally they were participants in the ownership of American by Access. Currently they have 51% ownership. So there's a gentleman's agreement between the two parties that they can use their access. But of course, the properties, when they agreed to that, were very different. Winnipeg has expanded multiple times since that original agreement. And it's now coming up that their loading and parking is exactly where American by Access needs access to their property. So it's already a concern, even in its current ownership. But again, from a market, if I was buying this property, that would be a major concern. And I don't think that's being recognized in the current assessment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
No further questions.
My question is, if they moved the one production line to the new area, what are they doing with that space from the new that was utilized in the old production line?
Just to be clear, Mr. Harden, the second line that they closed, it was the original line of the two in the existing building. So they've closed that line. The equipment's now obsolete. They're going to remove that. The new production line is a bit larger than the previous production lines. So that's now why they had to construct the addition. In the area where the original production line is being removed, will simply be used for warehouse.
Oh, this warehouse. Okay. So still being utilized, but not for production purposes.
Exactly.
What is it they manufacture here?
Yeah, that's a good question. I had that in my at the beginning of the brief, and I skipped over it. They manufacture plastic wrap. So when you buy a microwave pizza, there's a plastic wrap that goes around that. They manufacture that. It's also used in those special balloons you'll get for parties. You know, they're kind of a shinier. Yeah, and the product is actually called biaxially oriented polyamide, or BOPA.
Okay. used to work at 200 Salto Crescent, which is immediately to the west. And I didn't like it when they started building this building because they removed a bunch of nice walking paths I would use at lunchtime.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay. No further questions then. So is there a summary that either party wishes to do on this property?
I'm good, thank you.
I'm good as well, thank you.
All right. So that concludes today's hearing then. And where's my blue? I got to make sure I send it. There it is. We have heard all the items scheduled, and this hearing is now adjourned. So thank you very much for your presentations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Take care.